And so today, you've got two very special people here with a lot of academic credentials in addition to their experiences with Santo Daime. So first, I'll introduce Clancy. It's Kavanaugh, right? Correct, yep. Sorry, and then of course you heard her all speak this morning, and an amazing writer, obviously. And so we really appreciate her being here today. But Clancy has a doctorate in clinical psychology from the John F. Kennedy University in Pleasant Hill, California. She currently works in private practice in San Francisco and is a co-founder and member of the board of directors of, obviously, Chacruna. And she is also a research associate for the Interdisciplinary Group for Psychoactive Studies. She combines an eclectic array of interests and activities as clinical psychologist, artist, and researcher. She has a Master of Fine Arts in Painting from the San Francisco Art Institute, a Master's in Counseling from San Francisco State University, and she completed the Certificate in Psychedelic Assisted Therapy program at the California Institute of Integral Studies. She is the author and co-author of articles in several peer-reviewed journals and co-editor with Bia Labache of 11 books. So, and for more information, she has a website, drclancycavnar.com, and obviously the bio is on the website as well. So welcome, Clancy.
Thank you.
And as a Daimista, we're connected, via Facebook all over the world, and so I've seen Clancy's art posted for years, and so this is actually the first time we've been able to meet, and so it's a real honor. And she's an amazing, respected human being in that tradition. And so, and I'm sorry, but there's some things here I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing, but I'm going to do my best, Glauber. So, your last name is, I'm sorry? Assis.
Yeah.
Glauber Loures?
Yeah.
De Assis. Okay. Is Associate Director of Chacruna Latin America in Brazil. He has a PhD in Sociology from the Federal University of Minas Gerais.
Yeah, that's correct.
I can sing it, it's a hard time speaking. And is Research Associate at the Interdisciplinary Group of Psychoactive Studies in Brazil. His main interests include the ayahuasca religions, new religious movements, the internationalization of the Brazilian religions, and drug use in contemporary society. He's the author of numerous articles and book chapters, and the co-editor of the book, Mulheres y Psychedelicos?
Yeah.
Women and Psychedelics.
Yeah.
Again, Chacruna Institute. Glauber is also an ayahuasca practitioner with 15 years of experience. He has built this practice in dialogue with his local Brazilian ayahuasca community and with the blessings of indigenous elders and activists in Brazil. He's a father of 3 children and is passionate about psychedelic parenthood. In Chacruna, Glauber leads the weekly Kawara Circle.
Yeah,
good. Okay, music, mindfulness, and gratitude, a collective journey that promotes a connection with our ancestral roots and the energy of the sun. And currently he is let's see, I just lost my space here. Currently he is developing with Bia and Jacqueline Rodriguez, the Jornadas de Cura, a plant medicine center in Minas Gerais that promotes a bridge between the ceremonial use of sacred plants and psychedelic science. Great, welcome.
Thank you.
And so Clancy's going to start out with some remarks, and then at the end, then Glauber's going to do kind of an interview, and so they're going to have a dialogue. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Okay, I'm going to read some more. So today I'm going to reflect on the topic of Santo Daime, an ayahuasca religion from Brazil that has spread to many other countries, and a religion that has been so important in my life. I have been participating for 26 years and was one of the first members of the church in Santa Cruz, California, back in 1997. Along the way, I have used the medicine and teachings of the church as a foundation for my life, helping to form my goals and giving me spiritual inspiration. It is fully ironic to me that this foundation has its roots in Christianity, a force that has been so harmful in the world to so many, the handmaiden of colonialism and a current political force that, in its current form, is opposed to queer people and women's rights and represents the patriarchal, conservative force that is dangerously apocalyptic. As decades have passed, I've become more aware of the oppression of other people in the world and in figuring out the roots of this inequality. Why were intelligent people using flimsy excuses to justify power inequalities? The naturalness of men dominating women was because, well, just look around you. Men are meant to dominate women. Homosexuality is a disease. Transsexuals are an abomination. It's also apparent if you just look around. And if you don't believe me, check out the religions of the world. They all agree that women are secondary, that queers are sick, bad, or undesirable, secretive, and obsessed with sex. I remember when I was interviewing a leader of the União Vegetal, also called UDV, another Christian-based ayahuasca church from Brazil that has branches in the US. And I asked why the church had come out publicly against homosexuality. The leader said, as justification, quote, "All the world's leading religions condemn homosexuality." It seemed to me that damning the queers for this leader conferred important validation for his foreign exotic religion. That feeling that we have that things have always been this way is due to the shortness of our lives and the echo chamber of culture that records only the actions of men and paints violence and destruction as points of valor, which we receive as history. See the current effort to ban books that do not support patriarchy. Please note that this is the underlying theme of all these acts of censorship, casting doubt on the predominance of white men, straight, cis people, and Christian values. Who is being made uncomfortable by these books? Why do they feel threatened that children will learn about the inequality around them and what it's based on? Or that children will learn that there are options outside of traditional values? The stranglehold Christianity has on the United States can be seen in the way it is conflated with conservatism. It represents the patriarchy and spreads it wherever it can reach, justified by the blessings of a male god. In relation to ayahuasca, Christian missionaries spread their beliefs with the use of ayahuasca, as can be seen by the history of its dissemination throughout the Amazon. Those indigenous people who accompanied the missionaries must have introduced it to the peoples they encountered. The ritual use of ayahuasca was implemented for a variety of uses in indigenous populations, including preparation for hunting, healing, divination, initiation ceremonies, and social rituals. One author has identified 160 different groups in the Amazon who made traditional use of ayahuasca. Alongside these groups, but later in the timeline, are the mestizo ayahuasqueros, who combine Christian elements of their colonialized culture with indigenous elements. A condensed history of Santo Daime follows. It was founded by Ireneo Serra, known as Master Ireneo, who was raised as a Catholic. He was the grandson of slaves and worked as a rubber tapper in the Amazon. After drinking with the indigenous people who he met in Peru, he was instructed by spirits to do a diet with ayahuasca in the forest, where he received revelations that he shared with a group of followers in Rio Branco, a city in Acre in the Amazon basin. Master Ireneo compiled a book of hymns that comprised the doctrine of Santo Daime, words and music received from the astral by him and by others in his group, several of whom had their own hymn books, or inarios, of sacred teachings that they also had received drinking ayahuasca. Ireneo also received instructions from the Queen of the Forest on dances to perform during the rituals, and ceremonial and ritual elements from indigenous use were incorporated into the Santo Daime as well. The Santo Daime group grew until the death of Ireneo in 1971, when there was a dispute over leadership, and Sebastião Mota de Mello, one of his acolytes, took a group of followers deep into the jungle to form an intentional Daime community. Padrinho Sebastião, as he is known, founded the international branch of Santo Daime at Céu de Mapiá, where it remains a mecca for Daimistas who go to witness the territory where Sebastião's lengthy and stirring inario was received, and to participate in rituals lasting up to 14 hours, including all members of the town. Céu de Mapiá revolves around the ritual calendar of Daime that itself is based on the feast days of the Catholic saints, along with the holidays of Christmas, King's Day, New Year's, Good Friday, Easter, and All Souls' Day. Although most of his hymns make reference to Jesus, Mary, and God, you can find reference to spirits with indigenous-sounding names like Hipiyaya, or the renaming of the three kings as Tintuma, Titango, and Aga Ruby, or singing to the spirit of Tupersi. The indigenous element pervades Santo Daime because of the environment it was born into. Later, elements of Umbanda, which is itself a syncretism of African religion with Brazilian Christian beliefs, were incorporated into Daime, sometimes practiced as Umbandaime. As Santo Daime spread, it picked up influences from the people it spread to, including a mass conversion of sannyasins who had followed Osho, both in Brazil and then in the Netherlands, and other Eastern beliefs of the various cultures Daime spread into. In short, Santo Daime was able to absorb many influences uncritically, making it a varied practice that could expand to include many elements. Today, Daime in the USA attracts unconventional people comfortable with this unusual practice of taking psychedelics and singing and dancing to Christian themes in formal patterns while in uniform. It was in such an environment that I first encountered Santo Daime. I was not raised to believe in any religion. My sisters and I mocked the nerdy books our Catholic neighbors read about goody two-shoes characters. I was, though, secretly fascinated by the extreme beliefs depicted in these books, children willing to die for Jesus and people burned at the stake for refusing to disavow their belief. Religion was a weird world where you could say anything, and it seemed if it came from the right source, no matter how crazy it was, you were supposed to believe it. In fact, the more unbelievable a claim, the more spiritual you were if you claimed to believe it. I encountered Buddhism in my father's library, and it resonated with how I felt, and so from the age of 12, I considered that to be a somewhat more defensible set of beliefs. Religion and religious beliefs did not play any role in my life until my 30s, when I renewed my interest in Buddhism with a trip to a Tibetan monastery in Nepal for a month. When I returned, I was reciting the 100-syllable mantra several times a day and had made a vow to make a White Tower retreat in the next year. I never got around to that because shortly after my return home, I attended a Santo Daime ceremony that was produced for a class in the East-West Psychology Department at the California Institute of Integral Studies before they prohibited students from tripping, which they do now. The day after the ritual, we had a meeting where we talked about our experiences, and I asked when I could drink again. The leader told me that she was going to where the drink was made for a month, and I could call her when I got back. I had been planning to study Spanish in Ecuador that summer, so I thought I would take a detour to the town where she had mentioned and see where they made the drink that had caught my attention. I found directions in a Lonely Planet guidebook and managed to get to the town on my own, a day-long canoe ride with people I could not communicate with due to my absent Portuguese. When I arrived, there was a festival of people from all over the world, many of whom spoke English. I drank in rituals with hundreds of people, dancing all night long several times that month that I stayed there. It was completely weird, and I had no idea what they were singing. I was very strongly affected by the ayahuasca and would spend hours in the healing room away from the main area under the sway of powerful visions. Women prayed over me and told me to think of the Virgin Mary when I was having a hard passage, anointed me with daime and a cross on my forehead, or gave me marijuana called Santa Maria to calm me after a work. During this time, far away from the familiar things in the jungle, I began to have visions of Jesus and Mary. I saw them in heaven, and I saw Jesus on the cross, a strong wind blowing dark clouds across the sky. I felt the sadness Jesus felt when his apostles left him. I started to think that I must be a Christian, and this is what Christians discover, these feelings of love and sadness connected with the unjust murder of a saint. I at least started to give Christianity a chance, seeing that it could evoke feelings of tenderness and love, and even spiritual ecstasy when combined with the right drug. As my works continued through the years, I started to take a more critical look at Christianity, provoked by the continued misbehavior of conservative Christians, culminating in the evangelical support for Trump. My uncritical stance towards Christianity could not stand the justifications I had to make to support it. 2 years ago at a Shipibo Run retreat, I had a vision of a goddess who showed me the impact of patriarchy on the world, the exploitation of people, the rush to use up all resources, the denigration of women by men, slavery, and racism. I really had not given much thought to the idea of patriarchy before. In fact, until it was explained in my vision, I did not understand its depth and prevalence. I had heard of it and understood its general premise, but it wasn't on my mind before the retreat, and it certainly wasn't something in the intention I brought into the ceremony regarding my own personal emotional issues. It was a fatalistic vision. The goddess was almost shrugging as if to say, "Oh well, this experiment failed, we can try again." I was urged not to despair, and that regardless of this unfortunate condition, all was well in the universe, which could continue with or without humans on Earth. My partner told me to keep my visions to myself, as such dark predictions would bum people out at the retreat. Since then, I have given a lot of thought to the idea of the patriarchy and its role in the world of psychedelics, in addition to its role in my life as a daimista. In the Church of Santo Daime, we have a practice of giving vivas in response to shout-outs in praise of the leaders of the church or of the saints, the Virgin Mary, or the Patriarch San Jose. Each time I hear this praise shouted out for the Patriarch, it reminds me of the system I'm trapped in. In fact, there is no exit from the patriarchy. There are certainly ways to push back, but there is no place to hide. There is no alternate ayahuasca church where so much history and such powerful visions combine with spiritual instruction that is not Santo Daime. I've attended alternative hippie ceremonies and find myself always restless and bored. Having studied the music for years, I get great satisfaction from singing the hymns in Portuguese. Movements to make ayahuasca consumption more palatable to northers in Daime have included singing in English, leaving out the hymns that call for punishment of the sinners, and leaving the uniforms behind. All of this grates on me, making the works less powerful, maybe because the elements are more familiar. I want difference. I want a strong, strange force to change me. I don't want to be lulled into comfort. I don't want to be comfortable because I am not doing a comfortable thing. I am performing a strange ritual with a magic potion to heal myself. Patriarchy knows the power of belief and of religion, and that is why you can find it so easily there, sorting us out by the obedient and the disobedient. Queers are undoubtedly disobedient. I approach Santo Daime with the deep respect it deserves as a unique opportunity to learn directly from the plants, with respect for the history of humble people grasping eternal truths deep in the jungle and sharing them in song, but also with the disobedience to question the story of the patriarchs and their natural right to take and rule over others, embodied in the Christian myth and used to reinforce the patriarchy that ultimately does not serve any of us, straight or queer. That's my little talk. Thank you.
That's amazing, Clancy.
Okay. So,
Yeah, thank you, Clancy. That was amazing. And very important to me hearing from you. And thank you, Cameron. Thank you, everyone, for receiving me here. It's my first time in San Francisco ever, after a 24 hours trip from Brazil. Then I got sick because something I ate when I was leaving Brazil. And when people asked me how I was feeling, the only thing I could say was, I'm feeling great, I'm feeling wonderful, because it's so special to participate in Queer Psychedelics with you. And and also please accept my apologies in advance. I'm reading here because my English is not really good. I'm still learning, but I will try my best, I promise. And first of all, I want to celebrate this moment, to take a deep breath. Because for me, as a Brazilian, as a member of Santo Daime, for 15 years now, as an ayahuasca researcher, as a father of 3 young children who wishes that children can grow up in a more welcoming, loving, healthy, diverse, and plural world, and as a sociologist of religion concerned with the decolonial approach to the use of sacred plants, I must say that's a true honor to share this space with Clancy Kavanagh. And so the first and most important thing I want to do here today is to acknowledge Clancy's work and her wonderful biography, which inspires me very, very much. And I hope you know, Clancy, that it's a great privilege to be seen as a friend by you and Bia. And you all know Bia's trajectory, like as a Brazilian queer woman who had to overcome several linguistic and cultural and territorial barriers and also a macho structure in today's a world recognized leader on psychedelic justice with a nonprofit in California. This is very inspiring. And likewise with you, Clancy. It's incredibly beautiful to be able to witness your strength, your faith, and your capacity for cultural diplomacy, anthropological sensitivity, and your courage to struggle for the rights of queer people within the Santo Daime community. And you probably don't know that, but Clancy is one of the only non-Brazilian people able to inspire Brazilian Daimistas. And there are many queer Santo Daime people, but many of them are afraid to talk about their feelings, to come out of the closet, and have mixed feelings about Santo Daime cosmology. While they love Santo Daime and its potentiality, potentially liberating ritual experience, they have trouble feelings. They have trouble feeling comfortable with some of the things they see in their religious communities, like the attempt by some men to control the lives of community members, the focus given by some people to biblical patriarchs, as Clancy said, the inappropriate conduct of some leaders towards women, and so on and so on. And these people can feel distressed and confused and often ask themselves, how can the experience of being a member of Santo Daime community can be an experience at the same time so beautiful and so contradictory? And our machismo and heteronormativity and patriarchy be an inseparable part of the Santo Daime experience? And Clancy's work has been a decisive reference for people to understand that it is not. It is possible to have a healthy and good religious experience. The experience in Santo Daime can be liberating, inclusive, and also a healing experience from all colonial and patriarchal violence. But we are all immersed in a social cultural system of violence and exploitation that invades all spaces, that we find it very difficult to perceive the potentialities of ayahuasca religions and Santo Daime and our own potentialities beyond that. And Clancy's work has helped countless people around the world to realize this and to re-signify the experience of being a Daimista as something that can empower them as they are, and also as a message of love. Love for oneself and for all life that exists on earth, not only human beings, but also non-human beings. And I remember that when we met in Beer Parents' house, it was something really nice because Clancy said she was really happy that the war was there. The only thing more important than that were the birds that were outside. And so this love towards nature, towards the other kingdoms, is a very important part of Clancy's life, and I admire that very much. I want to acknowledge that. And there is a hymn of Santo Daime that says, para amar e ter amor, é preciso compreender, amar a todos os seres, igualmente a você, which means to love and to have love, it's necessary to understand, to love all beings, just as you love yourself. And I can give you an example of the importance of Clancy's work within my own church in Brazil. In my church in Brazil, there's a young gay man studying psychology right now. And one day I made out of the blue, I made a comment about that I had a Daimista friend in the US. She was also a psychologist named Clancy. And he interrupted me right away, saying, "You mean Clancy Kavanagh? Really? Oh my gosh, she's simply my main influence." And her work has helped me not only with my academic research, but with the integration of my own experience in Santo Daime. Yeah, and beyond the researcher Clancy, I also want to just briefly mention the artist Clancy, who is also an important influence in the ayahuasca artistic scene in South America. And I want to share a quick story that proves my point about that. It was in 2016. I was in Rio Branco, the World Ayahuasca Conference, Acre, Brazil, and there was a big fair there, which many indigenous leaders selling indigenous crafts, rapé snuff, indigenous art, and there was this guy selling T-shirts. They were very beautiful T-shirts, actually. I wish I could have bought more of them, but and I wanted to buy one, and I thought that there was this specific one that was especially amazing. And the print on the T-shirt was simply a painting of Clancy. So can you imagine that in the Ayahuasca World Conference in Rio Branco, Brazil, there was a Brazilian guy who doesn't speak English at all, who was selling Clancy's artwork in T-shirt format. I still wonder if he paid royalties. But I don't think so, unfortunately. But my point here is Santo Daime is a Brazilian ayahuasca religion, and it's simply wonderful to see that an American lesbian woman from San Francisco has the strength, the courage and sensibility to positively influence several Brazilian and make Santo Daime a more beautiful environment that may truly honor its roots. As Clancy said, Santo Daime was founded by a black Brazilian man born in one of the poorest regions of Brazil, Maceirineu. And according to Daime belief, Santo Daime was revealed to Maceirineu in a vision not of a patriarch, but of a goddess, a universal goddess, the queen of the forest. So I want to take this moment, this is really important, not only to me, but to all the Santo Daime community, to thank you, Clancy, very much for reminding us that Santo Daime can be something inclusive, beautiful, and decolonial, and that the Daimistas can and should fight against a system that oppresses all people. You are a wonderful person, a brilliant intellectual, sensitive also to the protection of the traditional and traditions and cultures of the Global South, and it's a great honor to be with you here at this moment. Yeah, so thank you very much, and now let's turn this space into a conversation. I have a few questions for Clancy, and if during our dialogue you have any questions or comments, I want to invite you to participate. Just raise your hand, and we'll give you the opportunity to have a Q&A session with Clancy. So, my first question is, Clancy, the society where you grew up is quite different from the riverside caboclo universe where Santo Daime was founded. So can you tell us a little bit more about how was your encounter with Santo Daime, and was there a cultural shock or conflict or of worldviews, or was it interesting from the beginning?
It was a totally weird, strange thing. That's when I said that. That's one reason I really liked it. It wasn't familiar, and people wearing uniforms was super weird. And I just want to thank you for that crazy introduction. A little bit over the top, but thank you. So yeah, it was totally weird, and that's why I liked it. And that's why I don't like when people say, "Well, let's just wear like white clothes and you can wear pants if you're a girl." And you'd think that I would like that idea. I think just like being an American and being queer and thinking dresses are weird for me, which I never wear dresses in the real world. But I like to put a crazy white dress and a crown on my head and stand in line and follow all these rules. It's by losing my individual outfits, tastes, and my clothing tastes, and my, just becoming part of this regiment of the Queen of the Forest, everybody dressing the same, everybody acting the same, everybody doing the same thing. It doesn't sound like, it sounds so oppressive, but actually I find it really liberating to not have to be myself and not, think, do people like this shirt or whatever? It's like, no one likes the shirt. Just wear the uniform. And so it gives me a chance, and also to insert myself. If you learn the music, I don't speak Portuguese, but if you learn the music and stand in your place, you're just as valuable as everybody else in the church.
That's great. Yeah. Going deeper into this conversation, you mentioned Céu do Mapiá, the headquarters of the international branch of Santo Daime in Brazil. I don't know if you are familiar to this place, but it's a very different place in the middle of a national forest in Brazil. And can you tell us a little bit about your experience in Céu do Mapiá as an American person?
Well, my first experience there was at a festival where there was a lot of people who spoke English, and I could feel like ask people questions. And I returned, I think, 5 more times probably, and spent 3 months there one time outside of the festival with just the Mapians there as my company, and that was very difficult because without people to talk to and with my limited Portuguese, and that community is very, like, everybody's watching each other. People came up to me one time and asked me, "Are you okay? Are you eating well?" And I was like, "Why?" And they said, "Well, we noticed that you hadn't been washing your dishes and putting them out on the thing, so are you cooking?" I was like, "Who's watching me, you know, do the dishes or not?" Or it was weird. And there was another time, I just will mention that I was staying in this house. This was during this 3-month stay, and I needed to do some work on the house. There was something that needed, big piece of wood that needed to be moved, and so I put some pants on and a shirt, and I was moving the wood, and a woman from the neighborhood said, "Why, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm moving this wood. It was in the way of this other thing." And she said, "But why are you pretending to be a man?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, why are you wearing pants?" I was like, wow, this is back in 1997, I think, before. But well, then TV came to Mapia, and I forget, like the 2000s, and then all of that went away, and women started wearing pants, and girls were wearing tube tops and sunglasses and stuff. But when I first got there, it was so regimented, according to sex roles, that, you know, you couldn't wear pants, which was weird.
Yeah, wow. Oh my God.
But I have to say, people were super nice to me, and I was really out of it a lot of the time. The ayahuasca for me was very strong, and I was talking to myself and looking up at the sky during the ceremonies, and they were like moving me aside, like, maybe you need to go back here. So I felt very warmly received, and that's one reason that I kept coming back, because people in Daime are so kind.
Yeah, great. And since you talked a little bit about the clothes, we know that during the Santo Daime rituals, there's a sexual division of space, and the women stay on one side, men stay on the other side, men wear pants, and women wear skirts. Does this kind of ritual structure bother you, or is it anthropologically interesting for you? I mean, I have heard both criticism of it being rigid, sexist, potentially authoritarian, and people saying good things about it, like of it providing a safe space for women, which could help prevent, abuse or men being around. Mm-hmm. And so, what are your thoughts on this subject?
Well, I really like the division of men and women. I mean, and there's also trans people. That's another issue of where they're going to stand and dance. But for me, going to Santo Daime back in the 90s, I just found it to be really nice. I felt as a lesbian a little bit like a fox in the hen house, but it was nice to have all women around and to be in that environment. And I think it's not denigrating to either side to say, let's just stick with our sex for now. I mean, and I would like to also just note that trans people are working their way different solutions in Santo Daime, but I find it to be kind of a relief to be an all-female space and to not have, and then at the end everybody gets together and we're all friends again. But during the ceremony, it just feels good to me to be, and I don't think it's, like, I don't understand why Master Ineo did that, but it was a good idea, I think.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And can you tell us a little bit about the different, because since then we are talking about Brazilian landscape, but can you tell us a little bit about the differences, possible similarities and potential conflicts of Santo Daime in Brazil and United States?
Well, the United States Daime relies, of course, completely on the Brazilian Daime, but people in the United States, there's different churches, as Galber knows, as I have complained, that will translate the hymns into English. and then sing them in English. And that has grated on me and created great rage in me. I really don't want people to do that. And the people who want to do it are very set on doing it. So there's this conflict between, like, let's make it more American, let's make it more comfortable for us. That group didn't change the uniforms, but there's like other groups that are like, well, we're not going to wear uniforms, we just want to wear all white. People feel more comfortable that way. People feel more comfortable, like, more casually. And I mean, I've seen that in Brazil too, like works in the forest. Works is the name of the ceremonies that they have in Santo Daime. But I much prefer to go to Brazil. Everybody knows the language there. Everybody's singing. It's more structured. The churches are bigger. It's just like I get refreshed when I go to Brazil, and then I try to bring that. And other people who go to Fichios, or where they make the daime in Brazil, or people come back and bring this Brazilian energy that we like. And I don't know, Americans are very trained to think America's the best. So when Americans have ideas, I think they think those are some of the best ideas. But I do much prefer the Brazilian style, and to be in Brazil, to do Santo Daime, for me, it's like a pretty qualitatively different experience, better. So.
As a Brazilian, it's good to hear something good about our country. And I have a question about this subject, actually, because we wrote an article together with Bia called The Translation Wars about music in Santo Daime. And basically, there is a conflict of perspectives when we talk about Santo Daime outside of Brazil. The founder of the Daime they were poor, humble people who never had formal schooling and didn't think about how the ritual structuring of Santo Daime would be in the global north. And today there are at least 2 different schools. One school defends that the hymns of the Santo Daime, which were received, channeled in Portuguese, be sung in the original language. They compare the hymns to mantras, for example, which are still sung in Sanskrit after centuries and centuries. They say that the sound of the words has power, and that it is important to keep the music the way they were received from the astral plane. But there is another school, very present in some US churches, that holds that hymns need to be translated and sung in English. And they compare hymns with the Bible and ask things like, what would become of Christianity if the Bible had not been translated into other languages? So, yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on this subject?
Well, I think the Catholic Church tried to keep the Bible in Latin for a while so people would have that experience. But I have become known, at least in California, for being very strongly for taking the position that we shouldn't change the words. They're so beautiful. When you learn to sing them, they sound very nice together. They were received because they sounded nice together, I think. They fit together, and it makes a beautiful song that has the power, like these individual hymns really do have the power to like change the way you feel when you listen to them. Like you'll be in a ceremony and they'll play one song and suddenly everyone will be like throwing up or having, experiences. It's the strong thing. And to change that and to make it into English where you have to like either use ridiculous words, try to fit your mouse, that means brothers and sisters. And you want to say your mouse, and then you're singing a song where you say brothers and sisters, which is how many more syllables. And it's like hearing a cart with square wheels get dragged down the street. So I have strong feelings about it, and I think Americans, it reminded me of a colonialization of Daime in the United States by taking something foreign and saying, no, we know it goes better like this because this is the way we like it. And it doesn't go better like that. And, thinking of, I was talking about, I'm not sure if I talked about it, but there's colonialists that went into places that were matrilineal and matriarchal and said, no, this isn't the way it goes. The man is at the head, and this is how they inherit this way, and cultures went ahead and did that. And I feel like that's the same process as Americans going, oh no, that's not how it goes. If everybody sings it and we all hear, like, they give out the hymn books. If you're going to be reading from, the translation is on the other side. You can read the translation and know what it says, even if you don't speak Portuguese. So there's nobody here that this is like in this war with me, but there's people that are on my side and people that are against me. And it's really something that it comes up whenever I go to works where they want to sing in English.
Yeah.
But
And I didn't know that before, but now I realize that there are some people in the U.S. that they think that we should start translating the songs into English, so we could transform Santo Daime in a world religion less related to Brazil and to any ethnicity. But the way I feel is that the more particular and local Santo Daime is, the more universal it is. And I want to share an experience very interesting that we had last year. We held a ceremony in LA, and we started singing in Portuguese, and then the people, they just tried to start, to move, to change things and start singing in English. And then Clancy, at the middle of the ceremony, just said, "No, Glover, you're not going to allow that." And then we continue only singing in Portuguese, and it was very meaningful for me as a Brazilian to be able to be. It was my first time in the U.S. ever, and I was here, and singing in Portuguese, being part of my own religion, so it was really special. And we are talking about globalization of ayahuasca and its traditions. Every day, several new ayahuasca groups appear in places as different as New York, Berlin, or Buenos Aires. And we have an interesting dilemma here, because often with good intention of creating a familiar environment and a ritual that can be understood by all people, I think that the New Age ayahuasca field ends up producing a kind of even new colonialist and epistemicidal approach, in the sense that it's erasing and promoting the invisibility of local traditions, symbols, cultural practices in favor of a supposed universal spirituality. And then I have 2 questions for you about this. What do you think about these issues, and how significant is it for you to be part of an ayahuasca tradition with all its interesting aspects and also its contradictions?
well, Daime is full of these little traditions and little insider knowledge and stuff that people know and stuff that people, and being like an insider, having been in Santo Daime for a long time, but in the United States, I still feel like Brazilians are way more, know more about Daime. It's people who, they grew up, some people grew up in the Santo Daime religion. But I come out strongly. I'm much more on the individual, like New Age stuff blands out everything. It takes away the power. And like I don't mean to sound idolatrous, but I have faith in Master Irenaeus' vision of what he designed. And it can have some changes. I think the changes have to be really thought out, and we rely on like leaders, like the current leader, Alfredo, to make these big changes. But I don't want like some American guy making these changes. I don't think the inspiration isn't like, oh, we need to just bland everything out, make it all in English, make it easy for people, people can wear casual clothing and hang out, and I have been to ceremonies like that, and I do feel it's weaker, and I personally, and so for other people that might be good, but for me personally, I really want I don't know why, but I want a strict Daime thing. I want people in rows. I like lots of rows and lots of people all doing the same thing. That's stronger for me. Like the bigger the group, when it's big and everybody knows the music and everybody's dancing the same, it really just helps you lose your individual identity, which is a big pain in the ass for me. I'd like to get rid of that and just, transcend. And for a little while in Daime you can.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. And one of your best-known works, academic works, is entitled "The Effects of Ayahuasca Ritual Participation on Gay and Lesbian Identity." And so can you say a little more about this? And what were the effects of Santo Daime on you and your identity as a lesbian woman?
Well, the effect of Santo Daime on me as a lesbian woman was because I was in Brazil, and I do think Brazil is kind of homophobic. I was in the closet in Santo Daime for the first couple of times that I went to Brazil. And then it seemed pointless, and so I came out of the closet, and, there was no big backlash or anything. I feel like people looked at me a little bit, but people look at you wherever you go. My entrance into Santo Daime didn't have a lot to do with me being gay, but then the more I drank, the more I thought about it, and the more obvious it became as part of the ceremony, my relationships with Brazilian people and my relationships with myself. And hearing people talk about, which I did hear in Mapiá, homosexuality is bad, and it's like a dog eating its own vomit, I think is one of the things I heard. And so that's what inspired me to do my dissertation, because I was having great experiences about myself, and I never felt anything bad about being gay, and I didn't ever get those messages. And so I wondered, where did those messages come from? I think they just come from, local culture. It's not in the stars, and it's not part of Daime or anything that you need to change your sexual orientation to receive the benefits. So then I concocted my dissertation, which was to interview 18 people who were gay, who had drunk ayahuasca, including Daime, but in other formats as well, and see if any of them had gotten some insight into the problematic nature of being gay, or if there was anything that came up that made them want to change. And nobody in my research said that they had received any messages about being gay is bad. More people had said that they'd been inspired to come out of the closet because they drank ayahuasca. So I just wanted to make that point, that it's not an intrinsic thing that you're going to understand. When you really get it, you're going to realize being gay is wrong. That's, with the most strongest medicine in the world, gay people do not realize that. At least the ones I talk to. And then I just want to send out a little diss of the UDV for encouraging conversion therapy, for coming out against gay marriage, for supporting Bolsonaro. This is another ayahuasca religion in Brazil that criticizes Santo Daime, but they are kind of aligned with the devil right now, and hopefully they'll get unhooked from that. But it's not necessary that ayahuasca will make you feel bad about your sexuality if you're gay. But I think that, the UDV will encourage people to change sexual orientations. And I know of people who tried to, conform to that and get married, and it doesn't work, as we know. So I think it has been used in some forms of conversion therapy in Brazil, and in the UDV at least. Although I have to say the UDV also wouldn't, during the time that I was doing my dissertation, they wouldn't talk to me. So I never did get details on what was really going on, because they didn't want to participate.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And in your presentation, you also mentioned very important things about Christianity and its oppressive aspects. And this is an aspect that has always intrigued me in the Daimista experience, that people who never had a good relationship with Christianity are suddenly praying to Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary. So, for example, the Santo Daime Church in the Netherlands, it's called the Céu da Santa Maria. It was founded by former followers of Rajneesh, Osho. And just as a curiosity, there is an interesting aspect about Osho and Padrinho Sebastião. Both passed away on the same day in 1990. And this was interpreted by Daimistas as a sign of connection between the two traditions. And it is one of the few large Santo Daime churches led throughout its whole history only by women. And they all pray the rosary, Our Father, Hail Mary. And talking to Dan about this, Lisbeth, the woman who currently leads the church, told me that it is like another Christianity, another thing. So she says she can't say Hail Mary in Dutch, but in Portuguese, a magic happens, and we are no longer talking about the Catholic Church in Rome. And the Brazilian anthropologist Jaqueline Rodrigues has an interesting reflection about this, because some people criticize Santo Daime as a religion that has Christianized ayahuasca. And what she argues is quite different. She says that Santo Daime has indigenized Christianity. So it's just, my point is, it's interesting to remember that presenting oneself as a Christian was a way to survive and not have one's belief destroyed in a Brazil dominated by Catholicism. And it was the way, for example, found by the Afro-Brazilian spirituality to survive that syncretized the African orishas with the Catholic saints in order to survive. And so, for example, Oxalá is Jesus Christ, and Santa Bárbara is Yansan, and so on. And regarding Santo Daime, it took something colonial and oppressive and transformed it into something able to include in its cosmology the African orishas, the enchanted beings of the Amazon mestizo spirituality, as you mentioned, the hippie yaya, the traditional culture of the Brazilian Northeast, through a black Christ, Mestre Neo, and a female goddess, the Queen of the Forest. But of course, this is just one of the possible ways to interpret this phenomenon. Once Santo Daime starts considering itself as a Christian religion, it also ends up attracting conservative people very connected with a Catholic worldview, fundamentalists, and even supporters of Jair Bolsonaro in Santo Daime Church, which to me is something unbelievable. And so we are facing a very complex situation, and I'd like to ask you if you can comment a little more on this. Do you think it's possible to think of a decolonial form of Christianity? What are some other interesting and problematic aspects about Santo Daime and Christianity that you can comment on?
Well, I really like Jacqueline's idea of the indigenation of Christianity, because, for an American, it's like those elements to me were just as weird as the Catholic things. I didn't know one from the other. I know Jesus and Mary, but there's a lot of stuff like I figured hippie yaya wasn't one of the Catholic saints, but it's all one big package. So I don't know if you can pull Christianity or change it out of the patriarchal way that it is, but like that's my dilemma actually when being Daime. I feel like it's definitely, I mean, it's from Judaism, that is super patriarchal, and then comes along Jesus, who's like in the line of David or whatever, all these like patriarchal touchstones. And I don't know about the future of like Christianity or the future of Daime mixed with Christianity, but I think for me, like the personal experience of doing Daime is so rewarding. It overshadows like all my concerns about participating in such a patriarchal system. I don't really have an answer for that, but I don't think it's all bad, and I don't think Christianity is bad. It's just been taken over by, it's powerful, and so then because it was powerful, all the powerful people came and took it for themselves and used it for what they wanted to conquer, continents and enslave Indians and justify everything. So I feel bad for Jesus. If there really was a Jesus, like he would be very distressed, I'm sure. Any cool person would look at it and go, what happened here? And how dare you say that? And having a rich preacher in itself, like those mega churches with these millionaires, like that. To me, that's just crazy, and there's millions of people following them. So I kind of just shrug of like, I don't know how this is going to end. That goddess in my ayahuasca vision said it wasn't going to be good, but I've just finished reading a book called The Patriarchs, that is about patriarchy, but identifying like, okay, who were the people that are making this into a patriarchy? And it's really just individual situations where powerful men are making these decisions, and those decisions other decisions can be made if people who are powerless can get power and change the course. So it's not inevitable. It's just, it seems like it's quite an overwhelming thing, and I don't want people to lose hope. I don't want to lose hope myself, but I'm old now, so I don't know if I'm going to see the end of, certainly not in my lifetime.
But I hope you can translate your answer into Portuguese so we can share with Brazilian Daimistas. I think they should listen to you. And and speaking of Christianity and syncretism, in the expansionist branch of Santo Daime, cannabis is considered a representation of the power of the Mother of Jesus Christ. It is called Santa Maria and plays a central role in the ritual and daily life of hundreds of Daime practitioners, along with Santo Daime. So can you tell, I know you don't like Santa Maria, but can you tell us a little bit about your experience with Santa Maria, Clancy?
Well, I do like Santa Maria. I'm famous for liking Santa Maria. I mean, we tried to have it be a part of the church here. It's legal now, but because of all the legalization stuff that people are going through, the idea that we are a single sacrament church versus two sacraments, people still want to focus just on trying to have the ayahuasca in the church and not have people consecrating Santa Maria. But I think it's a really nice way to bring like some sacredness into your life outside of a ceremony. You can certainly contemplate like reality and get great benefit from Santo Daime, from Santa Maria, from marijuana. And I just want to say I just did this training on internal family systems therapy, which is this new popular therapy to be often used with psychedelics. And using cannabis to do that kind of work, it really added to it. And I think it has a role in therapy that has not yet been discovered for people. Like some people can't use it because they have anxiety attacks or whatever, but for the people that can, it's a way to access like the astral world that is safe, inexpensive, legal here, and has been misused, of course, for lots of different things. And I myself have misused it at times, but I think it really is a sacred plant and deserves a lot of respect.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks. And Clancy, talking about sexuality, social justice, and also gender issues is still a taboo for a large part of the Daime community. And just want to mention that one of the first trans men to be a fardado and earn a star, which is the rite of passage to become a daimista, in the history of Santo Daime was in my church last year. And this year, there will be one of the first marriages, the weddings between women in the history of Santo Daime, also in our church. And I want to celebrate this, to say that Clancy's work has been a great influence, so that our church is seen as a safe church, a safe space where people want to spread love, to drink ayahuasca, to dance all night in union, recognizing the power of diversity, and being aware that we are floating in space, dancing this whole cosmic dance of life, drinking ayahuasca together. But it's also important to say that many churches have a conservative approach and worldview, and there are even reports of abuse and sexual harassment by leaders, both in Brazil and the United States. So can you, Clancy, tell us a little bit more about this very severe issue of abuse in ayahuasca and Santo Daime circles?
Yeah, it's sad because abuse happens, but people can't really complain about it because of the legal status of Daime. This one Brazilian leader had abused a woman, and it became this international event that we were both enraged that this guy had done it, and then also fearful that the woman would report it, and that our Daime centers in the United States would be investigated and exposed. And so basically the guy who did it got away with it and is returning and continuing to run Daime Works after he claimed that he was healed by getting rid of some evil spirit that had been in him, but I don't think that's the case. And I mean, just the abuse, the fact that people are on a psychoactive, very powerful, the most powerful maybe psychoactive substance, and that a leader would take advantage of that in Daime or in any ayahuasca situation is a horrible violation, and I think they shouldn't be forgiven or whatever. I mean, you can forgive them, but I don't think they should be continuing to take people on psychedelic journeys where, I mean, ayahuasca is very strong, and lots of shamans have been accused of taking advantage of participants in ceremonies, in indigenous or mestizo ceremonies, and Santo Daime is no different. And it should be no different that these people should be identified and, you know, they're not leaders if they're doing that. They should not be leading. They should be in the back of the room drinking more Daime and figuring out why they did such a thing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, before we really open to Q&A, I just want to ask one more question. But before that, I would like to say a few words about the importance of overcoming linguistic and territorial barriers and social stigmas and prejudices to take advantage of all the potential that exists in working together for a more justice, just psychedelic field full of love and solidarity. And I really believe that people from the Global South have a lot to offer about decoloniality, about the need to respect cultural differences, about ancestral knowledge and traditional healing, wisdoms, and about how the local and the particular can also have universal power just the way they are. But at the same time, people from the global north have much to offer about inclusion, diversity, freedom of religion and conscience, about defending human rights. And the example of Santo Daime is very interesting in this respect to me. So the Shakruna Institute released a couple of years ago a document Bia mentioned at the opening conversation called Sexual Abuse Guidelines, which had an incredibly positive impact in Latin America. It even influenced the creation of a specific women's forums in the Daime churches, which started to get better organized to defend their rights and to question the patriarchy within the religion. And I am myself a father of 3 children, and my little daughter, who just turned 9 months old now, has Down syndrome. And the wonderful stories of people like you, Clancy, and also Bia, and amazing events like Queering Psychedelics made me very interested in the subject of psychedelic parenthood. I want to live in a world where children are raised to have a happy life, where there is room for everyone, where my little girl can develop her potential, where all families, and not only white cis families, have not only the right but the pleasure of feeling safe in psychedelic ceremonies. So before moving on, I want to thank you, Clancy, very much from my heart for being a great reference on this subject for me and my community. And we are in Queering Psychedelics now. I'm not going to say viva to Patriarch San Jose, but I will give vivas to Queering Santo Daime and to Clancy Kavanagh. So viva Clancy.
Thank you.
And,
Wow.
I will move on to, before we open and I can call camera again. I have just one more last question. As a big fan of your art, how your experience with Santo Daime is related to your art, actually.
Well, I did go to art school and was a painter and did some teaching for a short while. And my work was always a little bit weird. And then I drank Santo Daime and then it became super weird. And I think only certain people now can really appreciate it. They're like, what's going on? It really, it's a super source of inspiration artistically. And I can't overstate, I wish that I could. Sometimes I feel like I see such beautiful things and I wish I could put them on paper or canvas, but they're just too beautiful and I can only try a little bit. So it's frustrating in that way, but yeah, it's super inspirational. It's great for artists.
Yeah, amazing.
And I just want to say Glauber is super great supporter of us and is a Padrinho in his own church and runs a very notable place. So he sounds humble, but he's actually a very esteemed person.
Thank you.
In Santo
Appreciate
Daime and helps the leaders of it. And anyway, I just would like to praise you more.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate you. Viva.
Sorry. So we're going to take some questions, but I thought first it might be interesting. How many people have experienced the Santo Daime work? Okay. Just curious. There are churches around all over the United States. Before we open to questions, I just wanted to point out a couple things. As a gay man, I was drawn to Brazil in 1992 for the Earth Summit. And I overheard someone talking about ayahuasca and Daime. I said, what is it? I want to try it. And I asked around. No one knew, and I finally found someone who said, oh, they did it last night. I'm going, frick! I'm going back to the U.S. And I went out to a gay club, met this guy, fell in love, extended my trip for 2 months, and found out then he had a partner. So I was the most magical, mystical 2 months of my life. I'd been a workaholic, and it was a magical experience. And I walk into a metaphysical bookstore, and I was a very active, as a young gay guy, very sexual addict, and so there's a cute guy behind the counter. And so I'm looking at these other section of books in the aisle, and this other guy comes up the aisle and says, my friend behind the counter doesn't speak English, but he'd like to invite you to a Santo Daime ritual. So he received that he needed to invite me in. But he didn't speak English, so he gives me the address. I take the cab up to São Tomar, and I have no idea what ayahuasca is. I have no idea what Santo Daime is. I was a bunch of Indians around a fire. So I had a 12-hour experience without any explanation. And here I am as, kind of sexually acting, all these gorgeous Brazilian men in their white suits and, hands, and I couldn't help but stare and drool, And they would look and they would acknowledge, but they wouldn't judge me, So I felt very safe, and it was a profound experience, and there's a lot of other stories that come from that. But I wanted to just say that as a man in 92, I felt very, very kind of embraced as a gay man in this work where they obviously knew I had some interest in them. And then I also wanted to point out that in the United States, the head of the national church here in the United States was a gay man for many years. He's still one of the senior advisors, and so very welcome. So there is, the United States is more welcoming from the standpoint of LGBT. And I've done lots of works in Brazil. I've been many times. I've been to Mapia twice. And I never felt any judgment. There were some Brazilians that came to the United States to one of our churches and saw me with my boyfriend at the time. I could feel some judgment there, but the reality was it was a very, very accepting experience. So thank you. Thank you. So questions? Any questions? And maybe if you could introduce yourself too.
Sure. My name is Isabel Santis, and my question is around appropriation. And ayahuasca was started by a man of, not ayahuasca, I'm sorry. Santo Daime was started by a man of African origin.
Mm-hmm.
who had access to an indigenous ceremony, and then took on basically the use of that technology to create something new. And Santo Daime has evolved in Brazil for many years into something completely different from the mestizo tradition and from the indigenous tradition, with its own authority and its own legacies and traditions. And at the same time has escaped a lot of the current discourse around appropriation. And I'm curious about what has Santo Daime done right, and what can current movements that are trying to work authentically with psychedelics and adapt it to different cultures, in this global movement that is happening right now. What has Santo Daime done right? What has it done wrong? And what can we learn from this experience so that new ways of working with psychedelics that are authentic and respectful, yet create something new for a different audience in different cultural contexts, can be, expanded.
Yeah, it's hard because back in the 30s when Master Ireneo founded the religion, I bet that there was not one thought of that he was appropriating, or that I think, they regarded the people who were using ayahuasca in the indigenous format as kind of like black magic or something like that. And the idea was that Master Ireneo had sanctified ayahuasca, this black magic thing, and taken its force for the good. And that's kind of like a thing that I heard a long time ago, relating that. And I don't know that that's possible to do now, because it's a done deal. Master Ireneo's dead, Santo Daime exists, and it's, not going to stop. It has its own thing, and it definitely is also has a lot of interchange in those areas with the indigenous people who come to the ceremony sometimes or don't, or But I think I think respect is always the main thing that needs to be used, whatever kind of medicine and culture that you're taking from. But I don't think it's possible for another religion to pop up like that without having to do a lot of, maybe with a new molecule, there's the Church of Silvamethoxin. But to take ayahuasca again and say, okay, now we're going to have this. Whenever they have a new thing, and there are new things popping up, I think they got a lot of splaining to do, and that might be possible, and it might be a proper exchange, and things are all good, but it really takes a lot more nowadays because people are aware of these things. I think Daime really has a lot of exchange with the people of Brazil, and a lot of them are indigenous people. But in America and other places, it's not so apparent. And it's just the drink that we bring and then the ritual, but you don't really see the way that it was interwoven with the people that it came from. But I do think they were vilified, sort of they don't know how to use this stuff. We're going to show you the right way. It's with Jesus. So I don't know if Glauber has something to say on that.
Yeah, I think I have some comments. But before that, I just want to acknowledge the hard and amazing work of the Shokruna team. And thank you, Nick and Joe, because they really helped me yesterday preparing the questions and reflecting about Santo Daime. And I'm a little concerned now because, for example, in the US, most of Santo Daime people, they are not only white people, but also rich people. And I was in a very important meeting of 38 Santo Daime churches in the US at the beginning of this month in Phoenix, Arizona. And there was this guy that was saying we should stop helping Brazil. We should take care of ourselves. We also need to build our community here. So Brazil, Brazil, they have a lot of problems. They don't have compliance. They have problems with keeping track of the money. So we should take care of ourselves. And it was like a punch in my face as a Brazilian there. Because as far as I understand Santo Daime, it's a beautiful encounter between at least three worlds. It's like Messer Irineu was a black man, a grandson of people who were enslaved, that met the indigenous traditions of Brazil, and that in a way acknowledged the ancient matriarchy of the Amazon region. And yeah, of course, when we are talking about indigenous people in Brazil, sometimes we do it in generic terms, but actually it's a whole universe. We have hundreds of languages, hundreds of different peoples with different traditions, with different cosmologies, and so on. But most of them are not closed or hermetic, or they are open to building relationships, to exchange. As far this is a reciprocal exchange. So I think the problem is when you start to tokenizing indigenous leaders, indigenous cultures. There's a paper, actually it's a chapter of a book from an anthropologist called Andrew Dawson. The name is funny. It's like if tradition didn't exist, we needed to invent it. In the way that everybody's traditional, everybody love indigenous people. But what kind of relationship are people building? They're going to the Amazon rainforest. Are they friends of indigenous leaders? Do they are really concerned about what is going on right now? We are facing a Yanomami genocide in Brazil right now, with indigenous children being murdered by official federal politics. And so I think this is very important to acknowledge, to understand. But at the same way, it's not a closed thing. And when we go deep into the ayahuasca field in Brazil, we can see a very complex universe. For example, I think this is beautiful, actually, because Messer Irineu received this traditional wisdom from indigenous people, probably from the Manchineri people, but there is a dispute. There are at least 3 different people that claim that they were the ones who gave Messer Irineu ayahuasca. And interesting thing about Santo Daime is that Messer Irineu is the only one non-indigenous person who is recognized by most of indigenous leaders in Brazil. And then because of the Brazilian dictatorship and the colonialism and everything, many indigenous traditions, they lost the knowledge to even know how to prepare ayahuasca. For example, the Yawanawa people, they're amazing people, very beautiful. The culture is incredible. But because of the colonization, there was this new tribes evangelical mission there. They stopped making ayahuasca. And also the Tucano people, who has a ancient knowledge, a language which is more than 4,000 years old, they stopped drinking ayahuasca at all. And then, in a way, Santo Daime feitores, the people who prepare ayahuasca, they meet some indigenous people, and in this exchange, it influenced indigenous people to started preparing ayahuasca again, and also the introduction of electric instruments like the guitar and the electric bass and this kind of thing, in a way, is related to this Santo Daime connection. So I think it's about the difference between being appropriating something and being a friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question? Anybody else?
Okay.
So would you like to take a more break, or just mingle around and you can come up and ask your questions directly? Anything else? Anybody?
We can just end it.
Okay. Clancy wants to get off the stage.
Well, it's almost time, right?
No, it is. And thank you so much to both of you. And obviously the love and appreciation for this. It is a very special doctrine. And as we said, it has issues too, but we all do. So thank you so much for coming today. And we'll be around here if you have any questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.